So, one of the thoughts that I have is, we're in the current dating scene. One of the resources we've had throughout history has been the resources of the rest of our family, especially our parents or even grandparents, to help us, look at potential spouses. And so, one of the things I've already done with my daughter is try to help her understand that I can be a valuable resource in screening for future husbands. I can spot things and see things and direct her towards things that she might not be able to see herself. And that's really been the case throughout all of human history up to recent generations, where we've started moving off from home and we've started doing getting married older. But that's a such a valuable asset to have, is an engaged um, parent or grandparent who can say, "No, I've seen this kind before, and this is one you want to stay away from," right?
Yeah.
And so that's a big resource that I think we need to look back into.
Yeah, and let's add to that as well, because again, I get that as I was alluding to a moment ago, Gen Z is not a blank slate here. Like all of us, they're dealing with what we would call federal headship. In a societal sense, we understand that we live in a society that we have today because of what our parents and grandparents did. On a prior program, my one friend from Canada, Jason, said, brought up the Chinese proverb that you want people who are planting trees that they'll never sit under, right? And that's
Right.
something we've lost greatly. So, based on what you said, there may be people listening right now who are like, I want to actually be in, a relationship. I want to get married. I want to have kids, but man, oh man, I can't trust my family to help me discern this because they have no discernment. My mom's got a dozen divorces. My dad's got a dozen different relationships with women he hasn't even been married to. That's where a lot of people are coming from. And another resource I would highly recommend, the pastor that we're well acquainted with Vodi Bakum. He wrote a few books back a couple of decades ago. One called Family Driven Faith. The other is What He Must Be to Marry My Daughter, which I think is maybe a little bit more relevant to today's conversation. But he talked about in his own experience how he was raised by a single Buddhist mother, and he got married to his wife Bridget when they were still in university, and the whole family thought they were crazy. But as he put it, I think in his family, up to his generation, I think they were the only couple that hadn't been divorced, and there was something
Yeah.
like over a dozen divorces in that immediate family in the last generation. So that's the kind of world we're finding in. So I guess if someone's like I would love to have a mentor, I would love to have a dad or a mom that would be able to kind of guide me through this and kind of help me see things from the other side. If they don't have that available for whatever reason, where else should someone like that be turning for help?
Your church.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Go
and
go to church.
I think this is important because again, some people, and I kind of that was a leading question, admittedly, because I knew you were going to go there, and it's good because this is the other thing that we have to understand too, especially for those of us who are on the right. And Brian, I know you've talked about this a little bit in just some private conversations. The idea of a libertine lifestyle where I can live on my own, like, let's bring in what you said about the Industrial Revolution. I can go to work, I can do my job, it's my money, I'm going to spend it on myself. I'm going to go off on my own vacations, just leave me alone. I live in isolation. A, that's not healthy. B, it really is not sustainable, right? Because
Right.
everyone always
Yeah.
has problems. We are. I'm not saying the government needs to be the shoulder to cry on, and that's I think part of the problem we have with the relationship that we have with our government these days is that it's basically taken the role of dads. It's taken the role
Exactly.
of brothers. It's become
Our community. Yep.
yeah, yeah, our community, and it's not like it's called socialism, but that's a misnomer in a sense because it's not really social. It's just bureaucrats, kind of deciding for you this is what you're going to do. So we do need to get back to a healthy place where yes, the government isn't as involved in our lives as it is right now. I think there's a disbalance there, but that doesn't mean that we're antisocial creatures, right? And when it comes to matters which relationships are fundamentally spiritual, right? We'll get into a little bit more on this in a second, but they're fundamentally spiritual, and you need to have people around you that share your, you know, your beliefs, that can kind of guide you and give wisdom. And yeah, so I'll let you take it away on like how would that work out? As you said, if if you need to turn to a church family instead of a bloodline family, how does that work out exactly?
Well, I think that it's very practical in the sense of in a church, you are looking for the people who um, are living out what they say, what they want, what you aspire to, and are hopefully even further down the road and have some wisdom and experience in what you are about to go through. And then also, it's funny we talk about networking with jobs. That's not just a random thing. You network to get a job because one of the most reliable ways to hire a good employee is to have them be well thought of by a employee you already think good of, right? Well, that also works with relationships. If you are, networking with and plugged in with a bunch of mature, godly men or women who are further down the road, or even just know other people, and they know that you are looking for a spouse, and they can attest to and have seen your character, then and they know someone else who a woman who is in a similar position. Well, that networking is a very valuable tool to know that this person is who they say they are, and someone who can attest to their character and to their where they're actually heading, what they want.
Yeah, no, and I think like as we go down this, that this is one of the things like what you're describing there is kind of maybe where, in our case, our grandparents, that's the world they found themselves in, where they were in
Right.
tightly in the communities. There wasn't, and I want to kind of go a step further with this here as I go through this, but they were in communities where like they all belonged to a church, and it was essentially a social club if nothing else, right? But people knew each other, right? And because of that, there was a lot more stability. And I can hear the social studies professors screaming in rage right now as I say this. It's like, but there was problems back then too. And it's like, yes, there was, right? But
Yep.
the magnitude of the problems, I don't remember reading anything from the 1920s, yeah, like we have in the 2020s, where basically men and women are like, I'm tapping out. There's nothing here for me. We've
Right.
clearly run the car into the ditch now. And the other thing I would say too is you're right. Like on the social level, you want to network. And this does answer the question of many young men and women: where are all the good men? Where are all the good women out there? Well, a lot of them are in church. I'm not saying that every church is a good church, by the way, but a lot of them are because there is that structure, right? There's a shared belief, hopefully shared purpose. But let's take it a step further as well and say that, you have churches that you and I would look at and go, they're not real churches. They are,
Right.
they're mosh pits with really B-rate music. And there's no community either, because you go in there for an hour, you sing a few songs, a guy comes up and gives his own little TED talk on something, and then you all head out for the rest of the week. And
Yep.
so we have to add a layer to that as well, to say that you need to have a shared um shared values, but it needs to go beyond that and say that you have to have shared beliefs, and that needs to extend into this whole dating and marriage relationship discussion as well. Is that what I think part of the reason why so many men and women are frustrated today as well, is that they're looking, but there's actually a real disconnect between a lot of people on what a family should be, what the goal of this
Yeah.
relationship is, how
Yes.
kids should you have kids, how do those kids
Yeah.
get raised,